So today we're going to do Mexican cuisine. Mexican cuisine is one of my absolute favorite cuisines in the world, and there are a couple reasons for that. One, it's soul satisfying. There's something really special about Mexican cuisine. It's the corn tortillas, and it's the beans. It's that food that sticks to your ribs. But there's always a really, really cool surprise when you're having Mexican food. From the fresh lime juice that really lets it pop alive to that surprise heat from the chili. I love Mexican food. I love it for dinner, for lunch, and for breakfast. And what we're gonna do today is a really cool traditional Mexican breakfast called Enfrijoladas. Now, I'm sure you've heard of enchiladas. Enchiladas just means in chili sauce. And frijole is the Spanish word for bean. So enfrijoladas means in bean sauce. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna basically enrobe 2 corn tortillas in this bean sauce that's mixed with garlic and oregano and the nice smoky, spicy flavor of a chipotle chili. So what I'm gonna do to start this out is I'm just gonna get our bean sauce prepped up. And I start with a nice small onion. And to cook this up, or to cut this up, I just cut the tops off, cut it in half. And I'm gonna show you a really cool trick to make it easier to handle that nice fresh onion and get a really good dice out of it. So what I do is I just unpeel the onion here, move that to the side, and then when I cut it, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut all the way down, but I'm not gonna cut all the way through. And then I just fan around the onion, just like that. So that way, you can see when I go to dice it, it's very, very easy to handle. And then I just rock the knife, move the onion through it, and when I get to the top, I get this really nice even dice on the onion. And I like the red onion because it's sweet and there's something a little bit extra in the flavor with that red onion that gives it some depth when you start to caramelize the onion. Caramelizing is really just a fancy word for browning. So I'm gonna repeat this with the other half of the onion. And then again, the onion goes right through here as you rock the knife, and you get that really nice dice on the onion. Now, to saute this onion up, we're gonna use a really special ingredient. This is one of my staples in my kitchen. This is an ingredient called mojo de ajo. Mojo de ajo is basically a roasted garlic olive oil with a little bit of lime or sour orange and some salt added to it. It's super simple to make. The way you make it is we're gonna take about 50 cloves of garlic. Now, I don't wanna sit there and peel 50 cloves of garlic, so what I do is I cheat, don't tell anyone. I use that garlic that's in that package that's already peeled, and I don't use the stuff that's already minced. The reason for that is the stuff that's already minced has reacted with the oxygen around it, and it's kind of gone rancid. But the stuff that's already been peeled hasn't actually been cut open, it's just had the paper taken off. And so that garlic is still pretty fresh. And I don't want to sit there and peel 50 cloves of garlic, so I just pop those out and I put them in a baking dish, and I take my favorite olive oil. And for this, it's usually a Kalamata olive oil because that fruitiness goes really well with all the other flavors in it. And it's got, it's just got this really nice richness to it too. So it's basically a rich, fruity olive oil. I pour the entire bottle, I'm talking a big bottle here, in the baking dish. Because if I'm gonna go through the effort to make mojo de ajo, I'm not gonna make a tiny little amount, I'm gonna make a jar full. So I pour that in there, and I put about a tablespoon of coarse sea salt in with the mojo de ajo, and I pop this in the oven, about 325 degrees Fahrenheit, and I bake it for about 40 minutes. You're gonna see the oil bubbles a little bit, and it's cool because the garlic is roasting and it's frying in there at the same time, and it's infusing that olive oil with all that flavor. So then I take the olive oil out after about 40 minutes, and I give it a squeeze of 2 limes, or if I happen to have a sour orange, I'll give it a sour orange. In fact, sour orange is the traditional Mexican ingredient to use when you're making mojo de ajo, but usually limes for us here in the States are a little more common, so I use some lime juice. Plus, it tastes fantastic anyway. So I give that a squeeze, I mix it together, and then I just pop it back in the oven for about 20 minutes. And when I'm done with that, I let it cool down. I pour it in this jar, and I have some of this beautiful mojo de ajo. And when I use the mojo, I don't just skim the top off. I dig down in there so I get those nice garlic bits. And that goes right into our pan. Now for this, because it's a bean sauce, I like to saute everything up in this wok because the wok acts like a saute pan at first, but as the ingredients build up, it starts to act like a really nice pot. All right, so what I do is crank the heat up to about a medium-high heat, and then our onion goes in there. We're gonna let the onion brown, and then we're gonna add in a little bit of fresh garlic because you can't really have too much garlic. Then we're gonna add in some fresh oregano and our beans. When we do the beans, we're gonna put the liquid from the can in there because it's a bean sauce, it's not a bean paste. So you don't wanna sit there and just have beans in there because you're just gonna end up with something really thick. It's just gonna sit on top of the tortillas. I promise it'll taste good, but it's just gonna sit on top of the tortillas and not do anything. So really we want that saucy effect. So once this browns up, we'll throw the garlic in there, the bean sauce, the can of beans, and just let everything simmer. And then we're gonna make fresh corn tortillas. Now, don't worry, you can totally use store-bought corn tortillas. In fact, sometimes when I'm in a rush, I use store-bought corn tortillas too, but we're gonna do something nice today. We're gonna make our own fresh corn tortillas, and I'm gonna show you how to do that. Before we do that, I'm gonna mince up our two cloves of garlic that are gonna go in our wok so that those are ready once the onion has browned. Now to do this, I'm sure you've seen it on TV where someone takes the knife and they go, "Rah!" and they smash it and the garlic explodes. That looks really great. But when you're mincing the garlic up, it's easier to handle if you just press on it because that lets that paper come right off and you still have a garlic clove that's intact and easy to handle. And you're gonna cut through that garlic just like you did with the onion. So we're gonna cut all the way down, but not all the way through. And the reason for this is that garlic looks intact right now. It's easy to handle, but it's not. It's actually sliced, and it makes mincing that little clove of garlic super, super easy. I'm gonna do the same with this one. And then just cut right through that. And now we have some nicely minced cloves of garlic. Now, if I need to mince up a lot of garlic, what I do is I just peel it and then I throw it in a small food processor and I pulse it a few times, and that's also a really easy way to mince up a bunch of garlic. But if I'm only doing a couple cloves, I just go ahead and use my, my knife. Now here with the onion, when I start, I give that onion just a little stir to mix the onion up with the oil and to make sure it spreads out across the pan. And that's important because what really browns an onion is not just the onion sitting in the pan, it's actually the onion touching that pan itself. It's the exposure of the onion to the direct heat of the pan that really chemically changes it and makes it caramelize. So you want to spread that onion out as much as possible. And then this is the toughest thing I had to learn in the kitchen, is patience. I always want to sit there and feel like I'm doing something, but when you're browning a food, especially an onion or something hard like a carrot, you just got to hang out and wait. Because every time you stir that, you're taking the onion off the direct heat of the pan. The key to when you stir the onion is when you can smell that onion browning. Then you get in there and you give it a few stirs, and then you hang out and wait. You're gonna do this for about 7 or 8 minutes. That's about how long it's really gonna take the onion to turn a really nice brown color. And then we're gonna add the garlic into it. And we add the garlic at the end because onion and garlic cook at completely different times. They're different sizes. They have a different volatility. That's a really fancy way of saying it changes really fast under heat. Onion is not so volatile, but garlic can turn bitter in just a couple minutes. So if you put the garlic and the onion in at the same time, by the time your onions are nice and brown, your garlic's gonna be bitter. So the trick is, it's a little bit of timing. You just throw that garlic in right as the onion is about to finish up, and then you can just add all the other ingredients for the bean sauce. So this is gonna take a few minutes, and then when we come back, Our onions are gonna be nice and caramelized. We're gonna make some corn tortillas, and then we have just a few things left to add to our enfrijoladas, like fresh avocado, tomato, and a nice surprise at the end. It's been about 7 minutes, and I've got the onions really nice and caramelized with that mojo de ajo, which is gonna pop off the pan and infuse our bean sauce when I add that can of beans to the pan. But what I'm gonna do first is I'm gonna get our garlic in, and really the key for me for when garlic is done is when you can really smell that garlic coming off the pan, and it does not take that long. As soon as that happens, you wanna get the beans into the pan. Now, traditionally, this is made with basically a pot of beans that get pureed up. But I don't always have a pot of beans sitting around in the kitchen. And so what I do is, now that that garlic's done, I just take a can of beans with all the liquid in it and just put that right into the pan. Okay, and then once that goes in, turn the heat down to kind of about a medium low, because you don't want all that liquid to evaporate out of the pan before you're done. So to finish that off, now that it's just on a low simmer, we're gonna add some fresh oregano. And you can see here I'm peeling kind of against the stems until I get to the top of the oregano, because it just makes it a little bit easier to pull those leaves off. Just like that. And don't worry about chopping it up or anything like that, because it's going to wilt under the heat of that bean sauce. All right, so our oregano is in. I'm gonna add in some cumin. This is gonna give a little bit of extra depth to the bean sauce. I'm gonna add in some salt. Give that a stir, and then we're gonna add in one of those special ingredients that really makes Mexican cuisine come alive, and those are chipotles and adobo. A chipotle is really just a smoked dried jalapeno, and an adobo is a marinade. It's vinegary, and it's got a bunch of aromatic spices in it, like cinnamon and black pepper and allspice. And what happens is that adobo infuses that chipotle with all that really intense aromatic flavor, and then it also pulls that chipotle flavor out into the marinade, so you get both the sauce that's smoky and hot, and then you get the chipotle itself. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull out a big old spoonful of these chipotles. Now, I love spicy food, I'm not gonna hide it. That's a lot of chipotle for most people, but I'm the one that's gonna be eating that. When you make yours, you're the one that's gonna be eating yours. So if you don't like spicy food, it's totally okay to just go with a tiny spoonful of chipotles and adobo, just enough to get some heat and a little bit of flavor into it. And if you don't like spicy food at all, well, first of all, don't admit that to anyone. But if you don't like spicy food, it's totally okay to omit the chipotles in this recipe. So what I'm gonna do now that that's all in is I'm just gonna let this hang out for a little bit. And after a few minutes, we're gonna mash it up with a potato masher, and then we're gonna coat our corn tortillas with that. Now, I like doing it with the potato masher. Traditionally, this is a pureed bean sauce, and really it's tortillas and this kind of homogeneous sauce. I like some texture to it, which is why I actually mash them up instead of just sticking it through a blender. But before we do that, we have to finish off our corn tortillas. Now, I've got one fresh corn tortilla made right over here, and I'm gonna make our second one. Now, when you do this tortilla press, the masa, that fresh corn dough, really wants to stick to the metal. So you put a little bit of plastic wrap and put it on the bottom too. That way it holds it in place. And then what you do is you take a little bit of your masa, and I form this into a ball. And then I press it into a disc. And then I put this a little bit off center of the hinges on the tortilla press, because when you clamp down on it, the tortilla wants to spread out from the press. So if you put it a little bit off center, it ends up flattening out right in the center of that tortilla press. Now, I usually get my masa at our local Mexican grocer. If you don't have one, it's totally fine. Like I said earlier, you can use store-bought corn tortillas, but if you have the fresh masa available, I promise you it is worth it. So here I gently take the tortilla off that plastic, and I've got an iron skillet over here at a medium heat, and I just gently lay that tortilla onto the iron skillet. And you're gonna see the edges of the tortilla start to change color a little bit after about a minute. And that's kind of a sign that your tortilla is starting to get done. It takes about 2 minutes at a medium heat to get that first side done. And then what you're gonna do is you're gonna gently put your spatula underneath that tortilla. If you feel any resistance at all, stop, because that means your tortilla is not done yet. But if you can easily slide that spatula under the tortilla, you're gonna do it, flip it over. The other side only takes about a minute to completely cook. And then we are gonna be ready to finish off our enfrijoladas. Now, while that corn tortilla is cooking, I'm gonna go ahead and mash up our beans. So I just take that potato masher, give it some pretty firm presses. And if your bean sauce starts to thicken up too much, it's totally okay to add probably about a 1/4 cup of water to the pan to reconstitute that bean sauce. Because you want the tortilla, you want enough sauce so the tortilla absorbs some of that sauce. All right, so now I got that bean sauce mashed up, got the heat pretty low on that, and no resistance on the tortilla. Flip it over. That's gonna be done in just a moment. So what I'm gonna do here is start getting our bean sauce onto the plate. And you just take a little bit and you spread it along the plate. Just like that. You're gonna put the tortilla on there. You're gonna take another one. So you can see it's like, it's a layer of sauce, it's a layer of tortilla. It's like a Mexican lasagna. Tortilla again, so right on here. And then we're gonna put that final spread of bean sauce along the top. And then we're almost done. You can see there's actually enough bean sauce in this recipe to make 2 enfrijoladas. And one of these, I'm a pretty big guy. One of these is filling enough for me. So depending on who you are, you might get 3 or 4 servings, or if you haven't eaten all day like me, you might get 1 serving out of the whole batch. That's the way it goes. So to finish this off, what I'm gonna do is I'm going to take some tomato, I'm gonna cut the top off and just dice this tomato up. Put that on top. And then one of my favorite ingredients in the world, a nice ripe avocado. And you can see I work the knife down into the avocado, and then I actually twist the avocado around the knife. It's a little bit safer, and it makes getting that cut nice and perfect a lot easier. When I dice my avocado, what I do is I take the knife and I run it down until I can feel the tip hit the skin of the avocado. Okay, so it's perfectly fine to do this on the cutting board. If you're not comfortable doing this, do it on the cutting board, because if that knife goes through the skin of the avocado, your enfrijoladas probably aren't going to be vegan anymore. Fortunately, I have a little bit of practice working with avocados. So then I did lines down it, lines across. That way, when I take a spoon to it, that avocado scoops out into the perfectly sized dice of avocado right on top. Now, even before we put the tomato and the avocado on, this was an awesome meal. But now with the tomato on the avocado, it's excellent. But excellent is not good enough. We're gonna make this spectacular. We're gonna add the last secret ingredient, and these are pine nuts. Traditionally, enfrijoladas are topped with queso fresco, which is fresh cheese. We're vegan, we don't do cheese. Even if we ate cheese, I would still use the pine nuts because these are so much better. So we just finished this off with a nice sprinkle of pine nuts on top. And you know what that means? It's time to eat. I gotta take a bite of these. You know I wanna keep talking, but I'm not going to. I gotta eat first. These are spectacular now. You get the warmth from the roasted corn tortilla and that satisfying flavor from the bean sauce all around it, and then you get, I wouldn't say the chipotle is a surprise. I probably put like 4 chipotles in my own enfrijoladas. There's no surprise there, but you definitely get the kick from it. And you get that bite of soft avocado, and it's followed by that final tiny crunch of the pine nuts. These are fabulous. I hope you try them at home. Thank you.